100 baby sea turtles in Venezuela drag themselves through the sand, anxious to reach the ocean.
They have just been released into the wild as part of a rescue plan to prevent their extinction. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
The Philippines detects its first 2 cases of the highly transmissible Omicron subvariant BA.2.75, aka Centaurus, which has caused COVID surges in many countries. Malacanang stands firm on President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s decision not to rejoin the International Criminal Court, saying it is a sovereign issue. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's expected visit to Taiwan sparks more tensions between the U.S. and China. Al-Qaeda leader al-Zawahiri killed in a U.S. drone strike in Afghanistan. And U.S. President Joe Biden offers to speak with Russia in pursuit of a new nuclear arms deal.
The Philippines has just detected its first 2 cases of Omicron subvariant BA.2.75, dubbed as Centaurus. The DOH also recorded more cases of other Omicron subvariants. Madeline Villar-Moratillo has the details.
The Department of Health has confirmed it detected the first 2 cases of BA.2.75 Omicron subvariant in the country. BA.2.75, which was first detected in India and called Centaurus, has spread to various countries. Health Officer in charge, Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, says the 2 cases were detected in Western Visayas. The 2 have fully recovered. 1 patient is partially vaccinated against COVID-19, while the other one is unvaccinated. Vergere mentioned the difference between BA.2.75 and other Omicron subvariants.
This is more transmissible, and this also has more immune evasion compared to the BA.5. Pero wala pa siyang ebidensya na ito po ay nakakakos ng more severe infection.
Aside from BA.2.75, the country has detected additional cases of other Omicron subvariants. In its latest genome sequencing, the Philippine Genome Center has recorded 1,015 new cases of BA.5. 3 of them were returning overseas Filipinos, while the rest came from all the regions of the country except regions 9 and 10. 883 of the patients have recovered. 84 are still in isolation, and the status of 48 is under verification. The country has also lagged 26 new cases of BA.4 from the National Capital Region, Cagayan Valley, Western Visayas, Central Luzon, Bicol Region, Davao Region, Soc-Sargen, Calabarzon, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Ilocos Region. 21 of the patients have recovered, 2 are in isolation, and 3 are under verification. The DOH also reported 18 new cases of BA.2.12.1 from NCR, Ilocos Region, CAR, Western and Central Visayas, Calabarzon, and Cagayan Valley. 13 of the patients have recovered, 4 are still in isolation, and the status of the last one is under verification. Vergere said they are still investigating the exposures and travel history of the cases. Madeline Villar-Moratillo reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Education has recorded a significant increase in enrollees for the school year 2022-2023 compared to last year. The DepEd has also coordinated with the local government units to vacate school premises converted into isolation areas for COVID-19. Eden Santos has the details.
The school opening on August 22 will push through amid increasing cases of COVID-19 in the country. The Department of Education says the large number of enrollees shows learners' enthusiasm to resume in-person classes. DepEd spokesman Director Michael Powa said enrollees for the upcoming school year have reached 13.152 million. Powa noted that the department has recorded 3 million enrollees on the first day of enrollment compared to more than 200,000 last school year.
Tuloy-tuloy pa rin po ang ating enrollment, although the turnout is significantly higher than that of the previous years. As of today po, we already have 13.152 million enrollees or enrolled learners. No? As to the turnout, nung first day pa lang po, napansin na natin that this was significantly higher because nung first day pa lang ng enrollment, nakapagtala po tayo ng 3.3 million as compared to last year's first day enrollment na nasa 222,000 lang po. So it does appear from the trend that our learners are excited to go back to in-person classes na po. Simply because marami din po sa ating mga learners na in previous years wala rin po sigurong access sa remote learning like gadgets or internet po.
The DepEd assured the public that there would be no discrimination against unvaccinated learners, teachers, and non-teaching staff.
A non-discriminatory policy of the Department of Education, meaning for both teaching, non-teaching personnel as well as our learners themselves, we will not discriminate. No? Hindi po tayo mag-discriminate. Wala pong separate guidelines for those that are vaccinated and those that are unvaccinated. So voluntary po pa rin ang pananaw natin sa vaccination.
But the Education Department, along with the Department of Health and local government units, continues to encourage everybody to get vaccinated and boosted. Powa said there will be counseling and mobile vaccination in all the schools with the assistance of the DOH.
DepEd will coordinate with the Department of Health at sila po yung magro-roll out. Kumbaga, hihingi po kami ng tulong sa Department of Health para po dun sa pagkatapos nating mag-counseling, kasi gusto natin regular yung counseling sa mga unvaccinated. Hinihikayat talaga po natin na mag-vaccinate. Once pumayag po sila, we will ask help from the DOH para po mag-roll out tayo ng mobile vaccination para sa kanilang convenience rin po.
Powa said the department is coordinating with the local chief executives to clear up the schools used as quarantine facilities in preparation for the resumption of the face-to-face classes.
In fact, in preparation for the opening of the schools, although we don't have the number right now, in fact, we were asking for the numbers na kung ilan ba talaga yung schools na ginagamit pa rin quarantine facility. But we are trying to coordinate with the LGUs to make sure na ma-clear out po natin mga to para makapagbalik eskwela po tayo.
Meanwhile, DepEd said they would refer to PhilHealth and LGUs the learners and school faculty and personnel who will be infected by COVID-19 in schools.
Meron tayo sa DO34 kung na hindi na nila kailangan pumasok, obviously pag may naging nag-positive, but I think dun sa pagtulong sa kanila, we will have to coordinate talaga po with the LGU and PhilHealth, no, para matulungan po sila, lalo na yung mga teachers sa PhilHealth po tayo. But kami naman po, ang utos lang po talaga ng Vice President, lalong-lalo na sa COVID, no, is that makipag-ugnayan kami sa DOH, tulad ng sabi ko kanina, para sa counseling at para sa vaccination, para yung risk nila na makakuha ng COVID ay maibisan mabawasan din.
Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Malacanang stood its ground on not rejoining the International Criminal Court despite warnings of possible political backlash. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles also assured victims of the war on drugs that the country has a judicial process in place. Vin Pascua reports.
Malacanang has shrugged off warnings by the Legal Counsel of Drug War Victims regarding President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s decision not to rejoin the International Criminal Court or ICC. Rise Up for Life and For Rights Counsel Cristina Conti said the administration should brace for possible repercussions and the political impact of such a decision. Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said the decision not to rejoin the ICC is an issue of sovereignty, and cases of killings during the war on drugs of the previous administration are being investigated.
Sa kasalukuyan, iniimbestigahan naman po ang mga reklamo ukol dun sa mga namamatay during the drug war. Kung kaya't hindi na nangangailangan pang tumugon sa ICC o bumalik ang ating bansa sa Rome Statute. So, naiintindihan natin na ang mga biktima ay may hinaing, ngunit bukas po ang ating mga hukuman at ang proseso ng hustisya para sa kanilang hinaing.
The official said the president need not call on the courts nor the prosecutors to speed up the judicial process on the matter because the country's judicial system involves a swift investigation process.
Bahagi po ng ating proseso ang mabilis na paglilitis lalong-lalo na dun sa mga kriminal na kaso. So hindi na po kailangan magbigay ng direktiba ang Pangulo, bahagi na po yun ng sistema ng hustisya.
Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Senators have expressed their support for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s position on not rejoining the International Criminal Court or ICC. Mayan Corvera has the details.
Senator Ronald De La Rosa is elated by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s decision for the country not to rejoin the International Criminal Court or ICC. De La Rosa was the #2 accused in the bloody war on drugs under the Duterte administration, which was the subject of the ICC probe. The senator believes former President Rodrigo Duterte is the real target of the personalities insisting on the resuming the investigation.
Is it necessary? Are we committing a crime against humanity? Is there genocide happening in the Philippines? Are we committing a serious crime of aggression against any other state? Bakit sila masyadong interesado? When in fact the Filipino people doesn't want. Kahit na mag-survey ka. Wala. Siguro ang interesado yung galit na galit lang kay President Duterte.
De La Rosa questioned why ICC insists on investigating the drug war even though Attorney Jude Sabio already withdrew his charges. De La Rosa said the investigation was clearly based on political hatred. The lawmaker added that ICC has become biased and there is no reason for it to intervene in the internal affairs of the country.
Bakit wala ba akong tiwala sa ating DOJ? Wala ba akong tiwala sa ating ombudsman? Wala ba akong tiwala sa ating Human Rights Commission? Kahit na bias yan doon sa kanila. Nagtitiwala pa rin ako dyan sa Human Rights Commission natin dahil they are Filipinos. And alam kong, alam nilang the real situation na nangyayari. At wala ba akong tiwala? Bakit hindi ko magtiwala sa ating mga korte? Bakit ko ipagtitiwala yung aking future doon sa mga puti o mga itim na yan na walang alam dito? Na ang alam lang nila yung bias na presenta ni Trillanes and Company.
De La Rosa admitted that there are cases of abuse that transpired during the illegal drugs campaign, but the police personnel involved were charged and detained. Some are already convicted.
Meron talaga nag-abuso, may ginawa talagang ganun. You treat each case individually. Habulin natin yan. Kung sino yung pulis yan, I am one with you. Hindi dapat yan na makalusot sila. Habulin natin. Pero huwag nating lahatin. Let's just be fair.
Other senators also support the president's decision. Senator Francis Tolentino said the country has an independent foreign policy, so ICC's role is not important. The country withdrew from the Rome Statute in 2018 as then President Rodrigo believed that foreigners should not interfere with the internal affairs of the country, especially its campaign against illegal drugs. Senator Joel Villanueva, for his part, said the President Marcos' decision should be respected as he has the mandate to form the country's foreign policy.
It is what it is. We may not agree with it, but we also respect the position of the President. We also were aware of his prerogative. We'll get a chance to talk to him about it.
Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The family of former President Fidel V. Ramos has announced arrangements for the wake and funeral of the former leader. In a statement issued by his grandson Sam Ramos Jones, the family has expressed their gratitude for the overwhelming support and well wishes. The wake for FVR will officially commence on Thursday, August 4 at Heritage Park, Taguig, where guests are invited to wear white. To manage the flow of guests and observe COVID-19 precautions, the family designated certain dates and times for groups and sectors to visit the wake. The family also thanked the Office of the President, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and their friends and supporters for their assistance with the arrangements. The former president will be laid to rest at the Libingan ng mga Bayani on August 9, Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Next up, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's expected Taiwan visit raises U.S.-China tensions. Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri killed in a U.S. drone strike.
So we conclude.
And U.S. ready to pursue a new nuclear arms deal with Russia. Find out more about these stories when we return.
Saan mang panig ng mundo, ihanda na ang shopping list nyo dahil narito na ang online shopping show kung saan ang hanap nyo, meron dito. Narito na ang Shopping All the Way with Jojo A. Eat na hit? We have it! May sayawan, tawanan, pati naiyakan. Pati pets nyo mag-i-enjoy dito. But wait, there's more. Dahil pati celebrity sellers, makikipag-online selling din. At hindi lang yan, dahil may chance kayong makabili ng collectible items mula sa inyong mga paboritong artista. Kaya what are you waiting for? Add to cart na! Shopping All the Way with Jojo A. Opening soon sa Net25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. China's ambassador to the United Nations, Zhang Jun, says a visit by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan would be dangerous and provocative.
As we can see, such a visit is apparently very much dangerous, very much provocative. If the U.S. insists on making the visit, China will take firm and strong measures to safeguard our national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The White House, however, warns China against overreacting to Pelosi's trip to Taiwan, saying she would have every right to visit the self-ruled island, despite Beijing viewing it as a highly provocative challenge. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says China need not turn any visit by Pelosi into a crisis, even as he warned that Beijing may be positioning itself for a show of military strength around the island.
There is no reason for Beijing to turn a potential visit consistent with long-standing U.S. policy into some sort of crisis or conflict, or use it as a pretext to increase aggressive military activity in or around the Taiwan Strait. And yet, Over the weekend, even before Speaker Pelosi arrived in the region, China conducted a live fire exercise. We, and countries around the world, believe escalation serves no one. Beijing's actions could have unintended consequences that only serve to increase tensions. Meanwhile, our actions are not threatening, and they break no new ground. Nothing about this potential visit, which, oh, by the way, has precedent, would change the status quo. And the world should reject any PRC effort to use it to do so.
The Chinese military released a video of the People's Liberation Army conducting land, sea, and air drills ahead of a possible visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. The video, released on August 1, marks the 95th anniversary of the founding of PLA. It ends with a slogan, "Bury all the enemies that dare to invade, forging ahead towards successive victories." Meanwhile, local Taiwanese media say the volume of Chinese naval traffic has increased near the city of Xiamen, about 200 kilometers off of the shore of the island. There is also unconfirmed footage uploaded to social media purportedly showing ballistic missile launchers in China's Fujian province, which is about 125 kilometers from Taiwan. Elsewhere, news reports from Taiwan media outlets leaked Pelosi's itinerary in Taiwan. SET News said that Pelosi is going to arrive in Taiwan and meet with President Tsai Ing-wen. She will also address the Taiwanese legislature by Wednesday. Before departure, she will visit the local Human Rights Museum and attend an event with Taiwanese activists. Streets in Taiwan are now hit with demonstrators protesting against the possible stopover of the House Speaker. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, on the sidelines of the nuclear non-proliferation conference at the UN, says Beijing will be responsible for escalated tensions surrounding Pelosi's possible visit to Taiwan.
This is very much precedent in the sense that previous speakers visited Taiwan. Many members of Congress go to Taiwan, including this year. And so if the speaker does decide to visit and China tries to create some kind of crisis or otherwise escalate tensions, that would be entirely on Beijing.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged the Communist Party to win the hearts and minds of people in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan as part of a national rejuvenation. Xi's demand was made over the weekend in a meeting attended by top Chinese officials. Xi was quoted as saying that the United Front is an important assurance for China's Communist Party to defeat the enemy, to govern and rejuvenate the country, and to rally all Chinese people, both at home and abroad, to realize national rejuvenation. The Chinese leader said United Front efforts were even more important as profound changes unseen in a century were playing out globally. That work, he pointed out, should include efforts to strike the right balance between commonality and diversity at home and win hearts and minds of people in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, as well as overseas Chinese. Xi added that efforts should be made to strengthen the ranks of patriots overseas and help more foreigners understand and become friendly to China. Xi, who raised the importance of the United Front Work Department during his first term, is seeking to step into a third term this fall, an extraordinary move that comes at a difficult time for China.
The Department of Foreign Affairs is closely monitoring reports of the potential visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. Moira Encina reports.
The Department of Foreign Affairs admits it is closely monitoring reports regarding the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. This amid warnings from the White House that China is planning military provocations in the Taiwan Strait to protest her expected visit. China claims the self-ruled island of Taiwan as part of its territory. Beijing considers Pelosi's move as dangerous and provocative. The U.S., on the other hand, has no diplomatic relations with Taiwan. It also recognizes the One China policy. DFA spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza said it is important to ensure communications between the U.S. and China continue to avoid any miscalculation that would increase the tension between them. The DFA is confident that Washington and China will be responsible for their actions in the region. Pelosi earlier arrived in Singapore and Malaysia as part of her 3-day visit to Asia. She also set to visit South Korea and Japan. Despite reports of her visit to Taiwan, DFA says the U.S. has not confirmed her travel plans to the island nation. Boy Reinsina reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In a televised address Monday evening, U.S. President Joe Biden announced that the United States has killed the leader of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, in a drone strike in Kabul. He says he hopes the death of al-Zawahiri would bring closure to the American families who lost loved ones in attacks orchestrated by the al-Qaeda leader.
On Saturday, at my direction, the United States successfully concluded an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan, that killed the emir of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. To the families who lost fathers and mothers, husbands, wives, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends and co-workers on that searing September day, it is my hope that this decisive action will bring one more measure of closure.
The U.S. leader says that aside from al-Zawahiri, no one else was killed or injured in the attack.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky says the security parameters around the first shipment of Ukrainian grain since the Russian invasion are primarily the responsibility of the UN and Turkey after a landmark deal to lift Moscow's naval blockade in the Black Sea.
Сьогодні почалося виконання ініціативи щодо експорту українського зерна та іншої агропродукції з наших портів на Чорному морі. Перше судно, яке перевозить 26 тисяч тонн кукурудзи, вийшло з порту Одеси. Станом на зараз наразі все залежить від виконання безпекових параметрів ініціативи. А це відповідальність партнерів, в першу чергу Організації Об'єднаних Націй і Туреччини.
Zelensky further claims the situation on the battlefield has not undergone significant changes over the past day. He maintains that fierce battles continue in the Donbas and Kharkiv regions. Nevertheless, he points out that Ukrainian artillery and intelligence have already done a lot to reduce the fire potential of the occupiers.
In Ukraine, as they queue to get their hands on food aid, a few dozen hopefuls risk congregating outdoors in Kharkiv, where they can be targeted by Russian artillery fire. It is the hours-long wait that is troubling them, not the danger. Government volunteer Maxim Gridasov says people don't think about what could happen because they just want their food. He says even when there is shelling nearby, nobody leaves. They wait for food. The military's notices in local media on locations for aid distribution always include the warning not to create queues as they can be dangerous. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has put the civilian toll at 5,237 in its latest update last week. Nemyshlyansky was bombarded by what authorities said were likely to have been Soviet S-300 missiles. 14 people at one food queue were killed in March by Russian shelling while waiting to collect bread in the northern city of Chernigiv. Moscow says it only selects targets with military value, accusing Kyiv of being behind the incidents or staging them, and sometimes alleging that Ukraine uses locals as human shields.
The United States announces a new tranche of weapons for Ukraine's forces fighting Russia. This includes ammunition for the increasingly important rocket launchers and artillery guns. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says the new $550 million package will include more ammunition for the high-mobility advanced rocket systems, otherwise known as HIMARS, as well as ammunition for artillery. Kirby says this brings the total of military assistance committed to Ukraine to more than $8 billion.
Today, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, the Secretary of State Tony Blinken, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, spoke together with their Ukrainian counterparts about the enduring U.S. support to Ukraine as the Ukrainian people continue to stand up to Russian aggression. and to inform them about a new $550 million security assistance package that the Biden administration will authorize today. This follows Secretary Austin's call with his Ukrainian counterpart on Friday, where he previewed that package.
U.S. President Joe Biden is ready to pursue a new nuclear arms deal with Russia, as his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin said there could be no winners in any nuclear war. Both leaders issued written statements as diplomats gathered for a month-long UN conference to review the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or NPT. Biden says his administration is ready to expeditiously negotiate a new arms control framework to replace New START when it expires in 2026. However, he added that negotiation requires a willing partner operating in good faith. Biden stated Russia should demonstrate that it is ready to resume work on nuclear arms control with the U.S. Russia's mission to the United Nations, on the other hand, inquired if the U.S. was ready to negotiate and accused Washington of withdrawing from talks with Moscow on strategic stability over the Ukraine conflict. In a statement, Russia said it is high time Washington made up its mind, stopped rushing around, and told us frankly what they want, escalate the situation in the area of international security, or embark on equal negotiations. Putin also condemned the potential use of nuclear weapons during the conference, pointing out that a nuclear war must never come about. He also said Russia has been strictly adherent to nuclear disarmament or disarmament agreements with the U.S., and all nations abiding by the NPT must be allowed access to nuclear energy for civilian use. Up next, bankrupt Sri Lanka seeks urgent help to feed children. UN kicks off nuclear non-proliferation conference as global fears fester. And rescuers release sea turtles to raise environmental awareness in Venezuela. More stories from around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Quezon City, sarap panoorin. Sa Quezon City, balay tawag gagawin. Kaya sa Quezon City Show, sumama na lahat tayo. Sa Quezon City, sa Quezon City. Kung ika'y lonely, wala kang magawa, walang magawa
back with more global stories here on Mata ng Agila International. Sri Lanka issued an urgent appeal to tackle rapidly spreading malnutrition among children as its economic crisis leaves 9 out of 10 people dependent on state handouts. The Ministry for Women and Child Affairs is seeking private donations to feed possibly several 100,000 children wasting away due to insufficient food. The bankrupt state, grappling with its worst economic crisis since independence, is unable to sustain welfare. Secretary Neil Bandara Hapuhine told reporters in Colombo that they had counted 127,000 malnourished children among the 570,000 girls and boys below the age of 5 in mid-2021. Since then, he estimated the numbers have increased several folds, with the full impact of rampant inflation and dire shortages of food and other essentials. He said the number of people receiving direct state handouts has almost doubled in the past year, with over 90% of the population now relying on the government for financial help. UNICEF has also issued an appeal for funding, saying that children in Sri Lanka were disproportionately affected by the severe economic crisis. Under President Ranil Wickremesinghe, the government is now in bailout talks with the International Monetary Fund.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced a public health emergency over monkeypox, describing the outbreak as a rare but potentially serious disease that requires the full mobilization of all available public health resources to prevent the spread. As of August 1st, when the governor declared a state of emergency, the state reported more than 500 cases. In a statement, which was also posted via Twitter, Pritzker said his declaration aims to expand the resources and coordination efforts of state agencies in responding to, treating, and preventing the spread of MPV. Earlier, California and New York also issued a state of emergency in the wake of the ongoing monkeypox outbreak in the U.S. Declaring a state of emergency will allow the state officials to ramp up their vaccination and testing efforts in a bid to slow down the spread of the disease. According to CDC data, nearly 6,000 monkeypox cases have been confirmed in the United States. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden is set to name top officials from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and CDC to head the response to monkeypox. News sources reported that Robert Fenton, acting administrator at FEMA, will serve as the White House coordinator for the country's monkeypox response. His deputy will be Demetri Daskalakis, the director of the CDC's HIV Prevention Division. The White House also told the press that the duo will coordinate on strategy and operations to combat the current monkeypox outbreak, including equitably increasing the availability of tests, vaccinations, and treatments. Monkeypox can cause pus-filled boils and rashes, as well as flu-like symptoms, including fever, headache, muscle aches, backache, swollen lymph nodes, chills, and exhaustion.
Official figures show that the number of forest fires in the world's biggest rainforest, the Brazilian Amazon, increased by 8% last month compared with July 2021. The Brazilian space agency INP says close to 5,400 fires were detected last month, up from 5,000 in July last year. Experts say July is typically the start of the Amazon fire season, when drier weather fuels more fires, mostly set by farmers and speculators clearing lands for agriculture. The worst July on record had over 19,000 fires in 2005. The increase in the Amazon came as major fires raged in California, France, and Portugal amid rising temperatures. This has been a worrying year for fires in the Amazon, a key resource in the race to curb global warming. INPE has detected 12,906 so far, up 13% from the same period last year. Romulo Batista of Greenpeace Brazil says it is only the beginning of the Amazon dry season, when the number of criminal forest fires unfortunately explodes.
Trees and burned buildings are in ruins after California's biggest fire of the year rips through the Klamath National Forest northwest of Wairika. Firefighters are battling with a fast-moving fire, which has torn through over 55,000 acres near the border with Oregon to save a community of 8,000 residents. Lightning strikes are even threatening to worsen the McKinney fire, which has already killed at least 2 people and has turned into California's biggest fire of the year. California, along with much of the western United States, is in the grip of its worst drought in more than 1,000 years. The drought, intensified by man-made climate change, has left the countryside deprived of natural moisture and exceedingly vulnerable to wildfires. It has also made the blaze hotter, faster, and more destructive. According to the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office, the fire has destroyed more than 1,000 structures, including homes, a grocery store, a community center in the area surrounding Wairika, though it has not yet encroached upon the town of about 7,800 people.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the 10th Review Conference of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is an opportunity to hammer out the measures that will help avoid certain disasters. At the opening of the meeting at the UN headquarters in New York, he says almost 13,000 nuclear weapons are now being held in arsenals around the world.
States are seeking false security in stockpiling and spending hundreds of billions of dollars on doomsday weapons that have no place on our planet. Almost 13,000 nuclear weapons are now being held in arsenals around the world. All these at a time when the risks of proliferation are growing and guardrails to prevent escalation are weakening. Reduction the risk of war is not enough. Eliminating nuclear weapons is the only guarantee they will never be used. We must work relentlessly towards this goal. And this must start with new commitments to shrink the numbers of all kinds of nuclear weapons so that they no longer hang by a thread over humanity.
Meanwhile, the executive director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN, warns of massive catastrophes waiting to happen as the NPT Review Conference starts at the UN. Beatrice Finn says the nuclear risk is increasing, with a new nuclear arms race ongoing.
Amid the COVID-19 pandemic and the monkeypox outbreak, hundreds of public health professionals worldwide will convene in Georgia in the U.S. to discuss issues related to infectious diseases. Jeff Sanidad has more.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, and the Task Force for Global Health will co-host in person the 11th International Conference on Emerging Infectious Diseases, or ICEID. The conference will run from August 7 to 10, 2022 at the Hyatt Regency Atlanta Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. Held every 3 years, the conference brings together more than 1,500 public health professionals from around the world to exchange the latest information on issues affecting the emergence, spread, and control of infectious diseases. The 3-day program includes plenary and panel sessions with invited speakers, oral abstract and poster presentations, and multiple scientific and public health exhibitors. These sessions will all focus on emerging and re-emerging infections. Selected oral presentations include how mask wearing varies across different settings, turning farmers into disease detectives, and a new paradigm for pandemic preparedness. Jeff Sanidad, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Guy Reffitt, who brought a gun to the U.S. Capitol during the January 6, 2021 riot and threatened House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, was sentenced to more than 7 years in prison, the longest insurrection-related sentence to date. Reffitt, a recruiter for a right-wing militia known as the 3%ers, was the first Capitol rioter to go to trial rather than take a plea agreement. District Judge Dabney Friedrich said Mr. Reffitt's reluctance to admit early that his behavior is illegal is concerning, adding that under no legitimate definition of the term patriot does Mr. Reffitt's behavior on and around January 6 fit the term. Refit was convicted by a DC jury in March of 5 felonies, including transporting and carrying a firearm on Capitol grounds, interfering with Capitol Police, and obstructing an official proceeding. He had driven to DC with several firearms, one of which he carried with him on the steps of the Capitol during the early hours of the riot. A video of Refit confronting police on the steps of the Capitol and urging on to the pro-Trump crowd was also played for the jury during his trial. Meanwhile, Refit's wife defended her husband after the sentencing.
No matter if you're a liberal, if you're an independent, if you're a Republican, this is not okay. The way that people protest in the future will be determined on their political ideology if it's okay to charge them or not.
More than 850 people have been arrested for their roles in the January 6 attack, and around 330 have pleaded guilty to various charges.
2 years after the COVID-19 pandemic, volunteers gather at Fuente de Piedra Lake in Spain to participate in the traditional tagging of flamingo chicks. The activity aims to monitor their population and movement. From Spain, Beverly Madrid has the story.
The traditional marking of flamingo chicks was recently hosted by the Laguna de Fuente de Piedra Nature Park after 2 years of COVID break. In the lagoon hatchery, 70 kilometers from Malaga, Spain, the procedure consists of placing plastic tracking rings on the offspring to follow the trail and the evolution of the species. This year, 600 flamingo chicks were tagged with the collaboration of 400 volunteers. The Fuente de Piedra Lagoon is the most important breeding ground for flamingos in the Iberian Peninsula. It is also a natural reserve, home to birds with more than 170 different species registered. Flamingos from all over the Mediterranean and the North African coast migrate to this place to breed. In normal years, the flamingos arrive at the end of January and stay there between February and July. The highest concentration of birds is observed in April, while in humid years, the peak flamingo season is changed to August and September. From Spain, Beverly Madrid reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Some 100 sea turtles flap in the sand, eager to reach the sea. They have just been released by a group of children and rescuers who have been fighting their extinction in Venezuela for 16 years. The 101 baby loggerhead turtles hatched in a nursery that Pedro Perez, La Sabana Conservation Project leader, built to protect eggs that he finds in the 3-kilometer of Virginia Beach. In the liberation, the excited children gently put the hatchlings in the sand. 4 of the 7 species of sea turtles arrive on the Venezuelan coast. The cardon, the largest, which can measure up to 2 meters and exceed 500 kilos. The green, the second largest with more than 200 kilos of weight. And the tortoise shell, one of the smallest, in addition to the caguama. The tortoise shell is in critical condition, the green one in danger, and camagua and cardon are considered vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation or Conservation of Nature Red List. Eggs sell for up to $50 a dozen, and the shell can cost $5,000 for jewelry.
Proteger este animal, porque yo me crié aquí desde niño y yo nunca le paraba a esto. Yo sabía que se comía la tortuga, el huevo. Pero que estaba así a punto de extinguirse. Pienso, bueno, estoy tratando de hacer algo por el mundo, tratando de salvar el mundo, sinceramente. Y se está haciendo algo, que es bastante lo que está pasando, el desastre ecológico, los cambios climáticos. Este animalito, imagino, por ahí.
Later in the news, Alibaba striving to maintain its U.S. listing amid delisting fears. Tiger Woods rejects at least $700 million from LIV Golf. And paper shortage delays Britney Spears' tell-all memoir. Catch the latest in sports and entertainment when we return.
for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Every Sunday, 9 p.m. Ngayong linggo, sa Cine Throwback.
The year is 1931, but the world is still stuck in the steam age.
Pops? It should have worked by now. Do you feel anything?
That is precisely what I'd like to know.
Ngayong linggo, alas 12 ng tanghali. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's net together sa Net 25.
Alongside over 270 Chinese firms placed on the delisting watch list, Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba says it will strive to keep its New York Stock Exchange listing. In an early trade, the market heavyweight sank more than 5% to its lowest level since May, dragging the Hang Seng Tech Index with it. Issues on technology, human rights, and Taiwan have tightened the tensions between Washington and Beijing, pushing the announcement to be released on public. From a crackdown on the tech sector by Chinese authorities to being hit by a $2.75 billion fine in April 2021 for anti-competitive practices, Alibaba has gone through intense pressure. Meanwhile, full access to audit papers of U.S.-listed Chinese companies is what U.S. regulators have demanded, which Beijing does not allow for local accounting firms. The deadline set for relevant entities to meet the requirements is in early 2024, and the removal of non-compliant companies for 3 consecutive years is also part of their plan. Alibaba's stock closed at 3.8% down in Hong Kong after having fallen 11.1% in New York on Friday. Both sets of listed shares have fallen around 25% so far this year.
In Huntington Beach, California, professional surfers take the plunge at the 2022 Vans U.S. Open for surfing. Also featured at this free 9-day event are BMX and skateboard competitions, food and prize giveaways, and an assortment of activities for the family. Alan and Eva Basaliaje of our Los Angeles team were on the scene in the second day of the Sports Fest. Watch this.
Events at the beach are steadily coming back, this in light of the receding tide of COVID-19 restrictions.
And after a break due to the pandemic, one of the competitions returning to make waves is the Vans U.S. Open of surfing.
The Vans U.S. Open of surfing, that's what really makes this event unique. You've got surfing, skateboarding, and BMX. It's super cross-generational. It's a 9-day event, and we're anticipating, close to 2019 numbers pre-COVID. So we're looking at about 500,000 people that we're going to be hosting over the 9 days. I would definitely plan to come early, catch surfing, get to experience that time on the sand and all the professional surfers that you see on the World Championship Tour and on the World Qualifying Series. Participate in some games out here, and then make your way over to the Vans Skate Park. Watch some of the BMX and skateboarding competitions. There's something for everyone. So if you miss something on the first day, come back the second day. I guarantee you there's going to be something for you to experience.
You're here at the Vans U.S. Open of surfing, where, hey, we've been gone for 2 years because of COVID, but we're excited to be back here 2022. My family, my father started Vans in 1966, and we're near Costa Mesa where our home offices are, but so happy to have everybody from the Philippines see what we're doing out here with surfing and skateboarding and BMX. We actually manufacture some of our shoes in the Philippines these days. So Vans is super proud to say hello to everybody all over the world. Over here, starting about 15 minutes, I get to cook. And every day I get to barbecue. So yesterday was 1,400 hot dogs and 450 sliders. Same will happen today because we got a lot of crowd that'll be coming out here. But that's, again, free. Just thanking everybody for coming out. We have a lot of games, but we give hats and wallets and bandanas away and just have the kids have a great time. We have art over this way. You can see them shaping surfboards, fixing wetsuits. So there's something for everybody in the family. We even have a music area where people come in and just grab guitars, drums, bass guitars, regular guitars, and just jam with each other.
So they wanted you to paint something to do with lemon. So they give us a lemon right here for, like, I don't know, visual representation. They give us a lemonade. I started painting a lemon that's like skating, and then like the little wheels on the skateboard are lemons. So I was gonna caption it, when life gives you lemons, you skate them.
So I'm not really an artist, but the idea behind it is like you have a wave and he's surfing, the lemon man surfing the wave, and then you have like little lemon fish and stuff. So good idea. We'll see if it turns out that way.
Everybody down here has a really chill vibe to them. There's music going on. We have just all sorts of events for everybody of all ages.
You got the surfers, the people on the bikes, the skateboarding, the dogs, the animals, the volleyballs. There's just all sorts of things. It's deeper from all ages, from little kids to adults to seniors. It's a fun place and different lifestyles. So many different lifestyles down here.
Interestingly, we were told that a lightning strike is one occurrence that could potentially suspend water and beach activities.
Thankfully, at this point in time, there isn't a single nimbus cloud in the sky.
Eva and Allen, Huntington Beach, California, Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
For some breaking news, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to arrive in Taiwan between 10:40 to 11 this evening. Taiwanese media reported that Pelosi's plane was escorted by Taiwanese military aircraft when it entered the country's air defense zone. The U.S. has deployed its 13 Air Force aircraft based in Okinawa, Japan, which the Pentagon called a routine deployment and claimed has nothing to do with Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. We'll give you more details on this in our news programs.
Some of the next clips are sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. In Brazil, conjoined twins born with a fused head and brain have been separated in what doctors described as the most complex surgery of its kind, which they prepared for using virtual reality. Arthur and Bernardo Lima were born in 2018 in the state of Roraima in northern Brazil as craniopagus twins, an extremely rare condition in which the siblings are fused at the cranium. Joined at the top of the head for nearly 4 years, most of that spent in a hospital room outfitted with a custom bed, the brothers are now able to look each other in the face for the first time. The dramatic events came after a series of 9 operations, culminating in a marathon 23-hour surgery to separate them. London-based medical charity Gemini Untwined, which helped carry out the procedure, prescribed or described it as the most challenging and complex separation to date, given that the boys shared several vital veins. Neurosurgeon Gabriel Mufarej said it was the most difficult, complex, and challenging surgery of his career. Members of the medical team, which included nearly 100 staff, prepared for the delicate final stages of the surgery on June 7 and 9 with the help of virtual reality, the procedure of which was performed in Paulo Niemeyer State Brain Institute of Rio de Janeiro. Using brain scans to create a digital map of the boys' shared cranium, surgeons practiced for the procedure in a transatlantic virtual reality trial surgery executed in both Britain and Brazil. British neurosurgeon Nur-ul-Owasi Jilani, the lead surgeon for Gemini Untwined, called the prep session space-age stuff. He told British agency PA that the medical session was just wonderful, and it was really great to see the anatomy and do the surgery before the team actually put the children at any risk. Pictures and videos released by medical staff show the boys lying side by side post-surgery, little Arthur reaching out to touch his brother's hand. The boys are still recovering and may need further procedures as they develop, the doctor said. Speech is difficult for them, and Bernardo has a motor deficit on the right-hand side. He added that the boys will take some time to get to the point where the doctors want them to be, but he believes that the boys can do it.
And now let us take a look back at what happened in history today. In 1934, Hitler became absolute dictator of Germany. With the death of President Hindenburg, he united the chancellorship and presidency under the new title of Führer, or leader. He used the title to define his role of absolute authority in the country's Third Reich. In 1968, a magnitude 7.3 earthquake hit Casiguran in Aurora province. Although 200 kilometers away from the epicenter, Manila suffered the worst impact, given the collapse of the Ruby Tower. Among the 270 people who died from that quake, 268 were buried alive in the said building in Binondo. And of the 261 injured, 260 were from the Ruby Tower as well. A memorial now stands on its location. And in 2018, Apple became the first American company to be worth $1 trillion. Now, Apple is worth $3 trillion, worth more than Walmart, Disney, Netflix, McDonald's, IBM, and Ford combined. It is known for having many successful product launches and loyal customers. The pandemic also sent sales of Apple devices soaring as people use them to work, study, and socialize.
And ending tonight's broadcast is a quote from author Leo Christopher. There's only one thing more precious than our time, and that's who we spend it on.
Spend it with us.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Elago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.